Welcome, everybody. This is Magic, and this is episode 2 of season 1 of This, That, and the Other. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing War Eagle 72. And he is a member of the Gridiron family, joined back in May of 07, has an 840 winning percentage, over 2,500 wins, has 118 conference championships, and boasts a national championship as well. So, Eric, welcome to the mic.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you doing this. I think it's a cool idea to give all those guys out there a chance to listen to some other coaches. And I wanted to be the first one because that way it only goes up from here.
We always have to have that foundation, that starting point. I thought that was what I did yesterday.
Well, but see, this is your show, so man, it's cool that everybody gets to know the host first, and then once you get this first one out of the way, and we'll kind of do the low bar, and then everybody else can kind of raise it from here.
Let's hope that it works that way, because it's been pretty good so far from the feedback we've gotten. So fingers crossed that everything continues to go well. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. As the setup is 10 questions for you today. We'll do a couple, 3 or 4, go on a break, and maybe do another 2 or 3, hit another break. But primarily the 10 questions are random, based on numbers from 0 to 50 that I picked up yesterday. And we're going to go ahead and start it with the first one. Do you prefer an empty conference or one with humans?
Well, it depends. It depends on if I'm trying to learn something, like if I've moved up a division and I'm trying to figure out how that division works. It works better to have an empty conference, so that way you're able to work on some stuff and not necessarily take a hit on wins and losses, especially with vision being important in the lower levels. If you're looking straight competition, of course, it's better to have guys that know what they're doing. And, I do like the camaraderie and the back and forth, and have been in some really great conferences with some guys that like to post on the message boards and have some fun with each other and kind of read each other on, especially when they get to the playoffs. If a conference mate is making a big run, it's always nice to look at the scoreboard and see how well they do, because it helps them, but it also helps you too, because once you get into the playoffs, you get that money that helps with recruiting the next year. So if it's straight competition you're looking for, then obviously you want the big numbers of human coaches in the conference. But if you're trying to work on a new offense or defense, or just trying to do a rebuild, it's nice to have that empty one to get those wins to help do that.
That makes absolute sense, and I concur with you. There are times when being in a conference on your own, you don't give away a lot of your secrets, so to speak. You can kind of do things that are outside the box that you would normally do. And if guys are scouting you for a potential game in the playoffs, that may throw them off a little bit. And in the process, you may have learned something about your team. So I totally agree with you. Speaking of offense, what's your preferred offense?
I've run a lot of different offenses, but I guess I formation is probably what my go-to, and it's probably what I've had the most success with. I don't know that there's a big secret or a big, underlying reason as to why, other than I do like to have the 2 backs and be able to help out with the blocking with the fullback and that. And it just seems to work better for me to join into the I offense. When I first started back in the day on the old one of the old versions of the game, I wanted to try to do the run and shoot with the shotgun and all the receivers and everything. And it just never really worked out the way I wanted it to. So I kind of moved away from that and settled into I used to run 2. I used to run I and pro set, and then saw some things from some guys that said that you really want to focus on one thing offensively and defensively. And so I kind of took that to heart, and when I picked up a team actually that you're running now, Cheney and Rockney, the guy before me, Mr. T-Rex, he won a national title, basically running the I formation and nickel defense, and says, that's what he recruited. So that's what I took over. And then as I started running that stuff, it seemed to just gel with me on how I was wanting to do things. So that's what I stuck with.
And I believe this is the first time I've had Cheney in the 14 plus years, almost 15 years I've been here, and primarily because of that fertile recruiting area that is Pennsylvania, basically. And to me, it just seems almost like taking candy from a baby sometimes when you're in those areas where you're one of the dominant teams and you can just pretty much have your way with any of the recruits that are out there. So I'm looking forward to that. I've actually got, in this particular cycle, I've got a very high potential recruit that's got, I believe, a 70-plus work ethic. So we're going to see how he fares going down the road. But anyway, that's enough about me. This is all about you. What do you look for when you apply to new teams? What do you look for in that team necessarily, or do you also blend who's in the conference with that team that you've got your eye on?
Well, when I look to get a new team, I try to, again, if it's going to be a rebuild, if I'm going to look at a team that's not very successful, I may try to join a conference that I don't want maybe necessarily empty, but at least one side of it empty, so that way I can try to build myself up to get into the conference championship on a regular basis, and then take my chances once that championship game gets there, and then build up the vision. But I also will take a look at record and what I should have done when I tried in D1 and I didn't, and it really burned me, and it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth about D1. When I was at Yost, I saw a team that had a good record. I said, okay, I'll take that team. Well, it turned out it was one of those guys like Sports Douche that decided to run 48 guys in a recruiting class, and I was at a mid-major school in Alabama. So that didn't necessarily pan out the way that I wanted it to.
That'll definitely come back and hurt you for sure, no doubt. Well, we've got one more question before we hit that first break, and this is one that I find interesting a lot, having talked to some of the other guys just on a conversation level, throughout the time in What If Sports. And that is, was there ever a coach that you looked up to when you first started? And if so, who was it, and what was it about him that made you look up to him?
Well, I don't know that I would say when I first started. See, when I first got into it, a friend of mine from the real world, if you will, got me into What If Sports. He had a team and he really liked it, and he didn't have time necessarily to run both sides of the ball. So he said, hey, why don't you come on and learn what you're doing? I want you to be my defensive coordinator. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So he and I kind of got in together, and he ran the offense, I ran the defense, and we did that for a while and had some decent success at it. And there were some guys that I liked coaching with and bantered back and forth with. But as I've kind of gotten through this, and I took a break for a while, and when I came back, that's kind of when I started picking out guys that really made me look at things. And you look at Big Papa, you look at the success he's had, and it's kind of tough to not look at that and say, that's kind of what I want to be. I want to have that success. And then there's guys like BJ. You read what he writes. And Nitros is the guy that, when Nitro says something on the message board and he says something about the game, I'll take what he says to heart and try to put that in, because he just seems like he has studied it, and he knows when he types something that's the way it is. And those are just some guys. There's a million guys that I could throw out there, but those three in particular, when they say something, you just really pay attention to what they say.
I agree with you wholeheartely on that, because there are guys out there that when they touch something, it turns into gold. I mean, they can take a historic 0-13 team and have them in the conference championship in a loaded conference, and you're like, how does that happen? So when those guys pipe up, you tend to pay attention a little bit to maybe learn something. Well, Eric, we're going to go ahead and hit our first break. And when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about you in regards to where you're located, your family life and age, and those insights. So y'all come right back with us.
We toast them crisp, we toast them light, you can tell by the taste we toast them. They're a tasty treat, so good to eat, delicious and light from toastin'. Toasted. And you know what? We like 'em.
Dump your bags and take a load off, because at Incontinental, we're anal about safety.
In the event cabin odor becomes overwhelming, methane gas masks will drop from the ceiling. Please note the colostomy bag in the pocket of the seat in front of you and your seat cushion doubles as a hemorrhoid pillow. Thank you for flying Incontinental.
Incontinental Airlines.
And welcome back, everybody. We're here with Eric, War Eagle 72, for the interview today. And Eric, how old are you and where are you located? And what about your family that you're willing to share with us?
All right. I am 47 years old. That's where the 72 in the name comes from. I was born in 72. I was originally born in Illinois. I moved around a little bit as a kid. My dad's job, we moved to Indiana when I was about a year and a half. Then we moved to Alabama when I was 3. And that's obviously where the War Eagle comes in, because I mean, everybody that lives in that part of the country knows you got to choose one or the other. And I went the evil Empire and and Alabama's arch enemy Auburn. So that's where the War Eagle comes in. And then when I was 13 years old, we moved back up to Illinois, where I was originally born, and that's where I live now. So I live right on the Indiana-Illinois border, about 30 minutes away from Champaign-Urbana, where the University of Illinois sits, and about an hour and a half away from Indianapolis. So
Man,
cool.
That's cool.
And as far as family life, married, been married for, it was 2011. So getting close to 9 years right. I've been married. Yeah, exactly. Been married about 9 years. Don't have any kids other than the four-legged dog, and she's crazy. So keeping up with her is a big task in and of itself. But that's what I am. Got a brother, got a sister. My brother's an Alabama fan. My sister's an Alabama fan. So you can imagine the rivalry there when the Iron Bowls played. So. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but it's interesting how when you move away from the intensity of the rivalry and move 500 miles away, you kind of see things a little bit differently than you do when you live right in the middle of it.
Yeah, you get a clearer picture per se, and you actually get to see some of the things that you can't see when you're right up there in the midst of it. Just how intense it is and just how far-reaching it is. You've got Auburn, Alabama fans all over the place and best buddies, and then all of a sudden one of them says something about being a Bama fan, and one says he's an Auburn fan, and now they don't even talk to each other out there in California. So, we've seen that in the military quite a bit. Speaking of which, my dad was stationed at Fort McClellan, so I had the pleasure of going to 4th grade elementary school in Anniston, actually a little town called Waverly. And one of my friends in that class, I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it wasn't, he had a twin sister. And he was a big Auburn fan, and she was an Alabama fan. And that's when I got my first introduction into the rivalry there. So, yeah, it's pretty intense.
It is. And, my sister, the year that Cam Newton won the national title there in the Iron Bowl, Auburn got down big early, and I was actually driving to Memphis with my wife to meet up with some friends, and we had stopped to eat, and I had kept getting texts, 7-0, 14-0, 21-0, and then I basically figured the game was over, and so went on 8-8, and once we got to Memphis, I turned on the TV and realized Auburn came back and won the game, so I texted my sister, and I said, "Hey, where did my text go?" And she says, "The same place Alabama's offense went." So. Yeah, it is fun, but kind of another thing about this world of sports and college football and how it's special. My wife gets mad because if I wear an Auburn shirt or if I don't even have to wear an Auburn shirt. We'll go somewhere and it's like Las Vegas or California or just South Carolina, anywhere, and there's a Roll Tide or a War Eagle that gets thrown out there, and she just looks at me and she says, "Really, even here?" And I'm like, "It is. I can't help it."
I hear you. Well, let's get back to the questions here. This one is one that I hate to admit that I have done this, but this is your day, so we're going to let you answer this one, and that is: have you ever canceled or delayed a real life event to focus on GD? And if so, what was it?
Well, the only thing I can say is there's a lot of time that I probably shouldn't be spending on it at work when it comes to recruiting to those 3-hour increments. Once the Eastern 3, 9, 6, 9, 3, 12, when those things hit, you kind of, if you can, because I like to do it right as soon as the things hit, so I can get it, be done with it, and don't have to worry about it. I either like to do it right after it hits, or I like to do right before and do like 2 recruiting things within like 10 minutes of each other, yes. just to let finish out the first one and then let the second one hit and then do it right away. But as far as postponing a wedding or going to do a wedding or anything like that, no, I've never gone that far, but I can't lie and say that work hasn't slacked off a little bit to be able to throw a recruiting thing down for a guy.
All right. Years ago, the guys, quite a few of them actually met up in New Orleans for a little What If sports gathering. So would you likely attend an event like that if it became an official thing?
I would be very open to do that. It would all, logistics obviously plays a big part in something like that. But to be honest about it, there was a college football message board that didn't have anything to do with GD that I was a part of, that I have built like lifelong friendships with those guys away from that message board. In fact, I told you before we went on the air, I have been in radio for almost 30 years. And one of my biggest joys of doing radio has been the fact that I do a college football preview show every year in August before the season starts. And I have 4 or 5 of those guys come up and join me on that on this 3-hour sports broadcast to do college football. In fact, last year, one of the guys lives in Georgia and he wasn't able to make it up. And so I basically took the show to him. I put all the equipment in the car and drove 9 hours to the Atlanta, Georgia area. And we did the show from by his pool out in his backyard. So I definitely, if I could make it, I would definitely, be up for meeting up with some guys and talking and forming those bonds, because to me, that's so cool to be able to meet people and hang out with people and build friendships with people from all over the country and all walks of life.
Absolutely. And you'll have to share the location of that broadcast with us, either on the message boards or some other way, because that'd be interesting to listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely, barring this whole coronavirus knocking college football out of whack, the second weekend in August is when it's scheduled for this year. And usually we do it here, in Danville, Illinois, where I live, and the guys will fly in or drive up and hang out, and we'll hang out at my house the night before, and I'll cook steaks on the grill and feed them well. And then Saturday, after the hangover wears off, or maybe during the middle of the hangover, we get up and do the show and have a good time. And then they either stay another night or they get tired of me and go home. It just all depends on the person and what they have going on. But yeah, once we get a little closer, I'll be very glad to put it up on the board.
And look forward to it. What is your philosophy on practice time, and does it change as you move up into the higher levels?
Well, because I haven't really experienced a whole lot at D1, I will say that as I moved from D3 up to at least 1AA, my philosophy doesn't change very much. I usually put the same emphasis on the different positions that, and I use, because like I said, I try to use an offense that I'm familiar with, and I kind of know with each position how I want them to practice. Like say with tight ends, do I want them to receive? Do I want them to block? So I'll set my setting to that. And same thing with quarterbacks. Do I want to focus on their speed? Do I want to focus on their strength? There's all kinds of those little settings that I try to figure out what's going to be best for me, and go from there. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. So really, when it comes to practice time, at least from what I've done, I don't try to change that up too much. Like I said, the 1A, I don't have a whole lot of experience at, and I don't know if I'm really, really ready to jump into that whole thing, because I think that's way too much time and effort for what I have to be able to put in it to be successful.
All right, thanks. That's pretty much the way I look at it for the most part as well. And it's interesting to see just how much you learn over time at what those little nuances make a big difference in the various levels, where you get accustomed to doing one thing a certain way that's worked for you. You move up a level and it's just blown completely out of the water. You have to start over basically. Well, it's break time again, so we're going to go ahead and take a pause here momentarily.
My complexion's so bad, I hate to go out.
Don't be a square. Try Ting, the faster way to clear up pimples.
Yes, doctors' half-face tests prove Ting medicated cream dries up pimples more effectively than any other product tested. Here's why. Boys and girls have overactive oil glands. Excess oil clogs pores, causes pimples. But Ting blots up oil faster, more completely than other products. In lab tests, Ting completely absorbed oil in 15 minutes. Hours later, other products still had not. No, hiding pimples won't help heal them. No mere cover-up can work like Ting's antiseptic medication.
Welcome back, everybody. This is This, That, and the Other, and we're joined today by War Eagle 72. And Eric's next question is, what aspect of GD do you feel is your best, that's your strongest ability?
I would say recruiting, and that's probably my favorite aspect of it, and that's probably why I look at myself as being the guy that let's see, how do I put this? When I first started, recruiting just has always kind of been my thing. I've always liked to do it, and I pay attention to Bob's rankings. I mean, everybody does, and so. When the guest reports come out, I always look, and I'm always disappointed if I'm not right up there with everybody else. And, I kind of look back at the track record, and other than Division 1A, I've always seemed to be able to be right up there. Now, do I turn that into championships on the field? I have one time, and it was a team that I had a little bit to do with, but not everything to do with. So I'm not going to sit here and say it was all me, because that's far from the truth. But I do think that I can go out and recruit a pretty good class. But you might call me Ron Zook. I can recruit the heck out of them, just can't coach them up very good.
I hear you there. Have you ever had that heartbreaking GD moment yet? The one that just ripped your guts out?
Well, I've been in a lot of championship games and have only won one. So there's been a lot of those heartbreaking ones, especially when you look and you see the 2 OT, 3 OT ones and realize that you're on the short end of that, because that's really one where you go back and you're like, okay, what exactly, what setting was wrong that got me to overtime, and what setting was wrong that once I got to overtime, I just didn't do what I needed to do. And, a lot of times you can second guess yourself all you want, but it just turns out that the guy on the other side of the computer screen was better than you and had better players than you. I mean, it's very, very little time that you made the mistake. The other guy probably just beat you.
What is the biggest change that you would like to see in Gridiron Dynasty? That's the last question. That's big number 10.
I think there's some things in recruiting that I'd still like to see changed. I think that you should be able to search by formation IQ. I think that would be a big plus, to be able to say, you know what, I run wishbone offense. I want to be able to search the recruits and see who has the biggest running back IQ for wishbone offense, so I know what guys that I want to focus on, because I could see a running back that has the speed and the elusiveness that I want, but when I go into the formation IQ, he's got like a 7, and it's like, well, okay, well, I don't know that I really want to recruit that guy, because I don't know by the time I'm ready to use him, is he going to be ready to go with the formation IQ? So I think that's a change that I'd really like to see. Again, I haven't spent a whole lot of time in 1A, but I kind of see some of the things that other guys mention, and the whole elite debate is one that I'd like to see. I kind of like the floating one within the game, to where, say, BJ Schumacher gets a dynasty in Hawaii or whatever, why not make him elite? Let him have a shot at being an elite team if he's got the success to prove it, instead of keeping the Alabamas and the Tennessees and whatever as the elites when maybe they don't have the record to support that. So I'm all for a floating elite program at D1. Either that or just eliminate it altogether. But if you're going to have it, at least make it realistic, to where if a coach builds a dynasty at a smaller school that's not an elite, let him have that advantage if he's good enough to do it.
I agree. He should be rewarded. And that's one of the things that I'm sure from a programming aspect is way above my head, but from a play and playability aspect, that would really change the dynamics, because you'd have to figure out who are the elites. They're not just given. You can't just go in when you're looking for a team and say, okay, I've got to have a rep A and a loyalty of a A. Okay, that's an elite team. You'd be able to see a lot less clearly. You'd have to do some homework to figure out which team out there is in fact the elite. Well, Eric, I appreciate your time today, brother. Thanks for popping in, and anything you'd like to say as we close here.
Mike, I just want to say again that I think this is a great idea that you've done, and I think once you get some of the bigger name coaches than me on here and talk to them and let them give away some little Easter eggs or whatever to help some guys out, it's really going to be a very popular thing with the guy on the message board, and it's a way to keep guys interested in the game. I mean, when WIS did away with all the stuff that guys used to use. I mean, I never used the big one that everybody talks about that was so controversial about whether it was cheating or whether it wasn't. I never I never used Yatzer, but it drove a lot of people away from the game when guys couldn't use it. And I really think what you're doing with this really is helping keep that interest in GD, so that way it just doesn't fall off the face of the earth, because I think it's a good outlet for guys to, especially now when guys have a little bit more free time in this in this way the world's working right now. So it gives them an outlet to do some things. So just keep doing it, man, and I know I'll be wanting to listen in and hear some of these guys. So keep it up, brother. You're doing a good job.
Well, I appreciate that, but I do have to go out on a limb here and say that if I get one of the big coaches, some of the bigger coaches, and they give up secrets and tips, those will be the podcasts that have technicalities and will never make it to air. All right. Thanks again, Eric. I appreciate it. And everybody else, you come back for season 1, episode 3. And if I'm not mistaken, we're going to have, I don't even know how to say this, but I'm going to learn. It's PWIEST, Pwist. He has mentioned it. He would like to be interviewed. So what 10 numbers are you going to leave him with for questions as we close out?
All right. So we got to go with 7 and 2. I mean, that's obvious. We got to go with 13. That's one of my all-time favorite numbers. We got to go with 4. We got to go with 30 because that's the month and day that I got married. So how many am I up to?
Halfway through. You're halfway through.
Halfway through. Okay. So let's go with 21. Let's go with 10. 42. Let's go with 24. And that leaves me with 1, correct? One more?
Correct.
All right. We will go with We'll go with 9.
And that gives us 10. Thank you, War Eagle 72, for sharing with us today. And to our listening audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to join us for episode 3. I'm your host, Magic, and you've been listening to This, That, and the Other.